Chapter 15: Ghosting. The days following our encounter in Daphne's studio were a slow, agonizing torture. I'd expected something, a shift in the dynamic, a softening perhaps, an acknowledgement of the undeniable connection we'd forged. Instead, I got silence. My phone became an object of both obsession and dread. I checked it constantly, scrolling through old texts, rereading her terse one-word replies, searching for hidden meanings, for any sign of anything working. That single, infuriatingly ambiguous word had become my nemesis. I'd called, of course, left messages, carefully crafted messages that struck a balance between casual interest and concerned inquiry. No response. I'd even driven by her cottage twice, telling myself I was just in the neighborhood, just checking in. Both times the curtains were drawn, the windows dark, the place radiating an aura of deliberate solitude. I hadn't dared to approach. The gardens, usually a guaranteed place to find her, were eerily empty. The workers and volunteers, unusually tight-lipped, offered only shrugs and vague murmurs about Daphne being busy avoiding me, more likely. The frustration was a physical thing, a knot in my chest, a constant throbbing tension in my jaw. I, Polo Reyes, was being ghosted. The concept was both ludicrous and infuriating. I was the one who did the dismissing, the ghosting. I held the power, the control. Or at least I used to. I tried to focus on other things, fraternity business, pre-law readings, workouts at the gym. But nothing worked. Daphne was a constant, intrusive presence in my mind, a persistent, throbbing pain. I found myself replaying our time in the studio over and over, dissecting every moment, every touch, every word. The way she'd looked at me, her eyes dark with desire. The way she'd responded to my touch, her body arching, yielding. The raw, untamed passion of our connection. It had felt real, profound, and yet had I misread the signals? Had I imagined the depth of her response? Was I just another conquest, another notch on her bedpost, easily discarded and forgotten? The thought was a cold blade twisting in my gut. I hated this feeling, this uncertainty, this vulnerability, this need. It was unfamiliar, unwelcome, and utterly consuming. I found myself back in my room, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The golden boy, the unflappable fraternity president, stared back at me, but the image felt hollow, a facade. Beneath the surface I was a mess, a tangled knot of insecurity and desperation. I needed to see her, to talk to her, to understand what was happening, to regain control. I considered driving to her studio, confronting her, demanding answers. But a flicker of something held me back. Fear, respect, I wasn't sure. But I knew that forcing the issue would only push her further away. Instead, I picked up my phone again, my thumb hovering over her contact. I started to type a text, then deleted it. Started again, deleted again. What could I say? How could I possibly articulate the swirling vortex of emotions that consumed me? Finally, I settled on something simple, something seemingly innocuous. Thinking of you. Hope the sculpture is going well. I hit send, then immediately regretted it. It was weak, needy, pathetic. I waited, staring at the phone, willing it to vibrate, to chime, to offer some sign of life, some indication that she wasn't completely indifferent to my existence. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The silence stretched on and on and on. Finally a response, a single word, thanks. The brevity of the message, the cold formality, was a punch to the gut. It was a dismissal, a rejection. A clear signal that the walls were back up, higher and stronger than ever. I threw the phone onto the bed, the gesture fueled by a surge of frustration and despair. I was losing her, and I had no idea how to get her back. The game, it seemed, had changed, and I was no longer sure I knew the rules, or if I am being truthful, if I ever had. Her response echoed in my mind, mocking me. It was perfectly polite, perfectly impersonal. A brick wall, a closed door, a slap in the face. I paced my room, the Spartan furnishings offering no comfort, no distraction. The restless energy that had been simmering beneath the surface for days now boiled over, a furious, frustrated energy that demanded an outlet. I went to the window, staring out at the quad, but I didn't see the manicured lawns, the pristine buildings, the familiar landscape of my privileged life. I saw her, Daphne, in her studio, surrounded by her art, her passion, her life, a life that increasingly felt like it was excluding me. The thought was unbearable. I needed a plan, a strategy. I needed to regain the upper hand, to reassert control. But my usual tactics, charm, persistence, calculated displays of affection seemed to be failing me. Daphne was different. She saw through the facade, the carefully constructed persona. She demanded something more, something real. And that, I realized with a growing sense of unease, was the problem. I wasn't sure I had anything real to offer. My life, my identity, had been built on a foundation of privilege, of expectations, of carefully cultivated appearances. I was the golden boy, the fraternity president, the future lawyer, but beneath the surface what was there? The question, unwelcome and unsettling, hung in the air. I tried to distract myself. I went to the gym, pushing myself to the point of exhaustion, hoping to silence the relentless voice in my head. But even the physical exertion couldn't drown out the image of Daphne's face, her eyes, her smile, the way she'd looked at me in the studio, that brief fleeting moment of vulnerability, of surrender I showered, the hot water pounding against my skin, but it couldn't wash away the feeling of dirtiness, not physical dirt, but something deeper, something more insidious, the feeling that I was manipulating her, that I was using her, that I was at my core no different from Zeph. The thought was repulsive. Addressed, choosing clothes with a deliberate carelessness, a subconscious rebellion against the meticulously curated image I usually projected. Jeans, a faded t-shirt, worn leather boots. A small act of defiance, but it felt significant. I needed to see her, not to confront her, not to demand answers, but simply to see her, to reassure myself that she was real, that she was there, that I hadn't imagined the entire thing. But I couldn't just show up at her studio, not again, not yet. I needed a pretext, a reason, something subtle. Then it hit me. Stage 2, the gala. The upcoming Phi Delta Gamma charity gala was the perfect opportunity. A chance to see her in a different setting, to interact with her in a more controlled environment, a chance to remind her of my world, of my power, of my influence. But it was more than that. It was a chance to show her a different side of myself, the real me, or at least the version of myself I was desperately trying to believe in. The man who could be worthy of her. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and found the number for the event chair. It was time to make some arrangements. The gala was no longer just a social obligation. It was a strategic maneuver, a crucial piece in the increasingly complex, increasingly desperate game I was playing. A game I was determined to win, even if I was starting to lose sight of what winning actually meant. And as I made the call, I had one thought, a plan of sorts. I needed to get her there. Publicly, officially, but most importantly, willingly, and I only had a little bit of time to make it happen. The clock was ticking.